Took a swing at a wrecking ball and I prayed for my downfall, and I found a way to reconcile, 'cause in my heart it's not worthwhile. It's a bloody battlefield where some go down, others heal. In the end it's all the same. All you can do is play the game. Oh, do we say goodbye? Refuse to question why. I'm sad to say I'm sorry, so lie. Pretend that you're okay. Swear that you will stay. Keep trying for one day. I'm sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. There's nothing left for me to hide. Don't wanna live a lie. Too many lows, too many highs. Too many things to criticize. And so I leave it all behind. Don't wanna live a lie. Life kept spitting at my feet and forced me down a dead-end street, when all I had went up in flames, burning only dark remains. I cover up every part of my skin, oh, 'cause I don't like the person within. Oh, I know I'm the one to blame. All I can do is take the shame. Oh, do we say goodbye? Refuse to question why. I'm too sad to say I'm sorry, so lie and pretend that you're okay. Swear that you will stay. Keep trying for one day. Whoa, I'm sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. There's nothing left for me to hide. Don't wanna live a lie. Too many lows, too many highs. Too many things to criticize. So I leave it all behind. Don't wanna live a lie. A lie. I don't wanna live a lie. We'll live a lie. Ooh, I'm sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. Oh no.
All right, everybody, we are here live. Justice is the process here. Got started a little earlier than 11. Actually, I was planning to get started at 10. I wasn't expecting this case, and I decided to make a last-minute audible change and decided we were going to cover excuse me. We were going to cover this case, Blake Scanlon, state of Massachusetts, instead of the Rancher case out in Arizona. I'm going to continue to observe that case, but I think logistically speaking, this seems like this is going to be better. Number one, it's in my time zone. Number two, it's going to go 5 days a week. And number three, it's an interesting case. It's the kind I like to cover because it's not a flat-out guilty, not guilty situation. This is a situation where Mr. Scanlon is charged with stabbing his girlfriend, mother of his child, after he finds her engaged in cheating behavior. And he stabs her to death, leaves her in their apartment for like 2 days, lives with her there, and then eventually calls the police and says, I did it. And he slices his own wrist. He gets taken to the hospital. So now attorneys get involved. He's made statements. I did this. I did this. So this is not an issue. This is not going to be a case where it's going to be, hey, I didn't do this. This is the jury gets to classify what he did. This is one of those situations where they're going to be arguing the law. They're going to be arguing what can the state prove and what can't they prove. State wants to prove first degree unaliving. I think the defense is going to be trying to prove somewhere around second degree to manslaughter, saying that he was so overwhelmed with emotion when he caught her cheating that, the result is shouldn't be considered first degree unaliving. So it's the type of case I like because it's one where the defense attorneys are going to be arguing the law. The state's going to be arguing the law. The jury's got a tough decision. And we're going to, and normally juries take things pretty serious. So I think in a case like this, it's pretty brutal. I think she was stabbed, I believe, like 26 times. But anyways, we're going to jump in the courtroom. We're a little bit behind the live feed. They began a little after 9. They took a break at around 10. I've been monitoring it as I was preparing the set and everything to get ready to roll live on this. So following the lunch break, we should be live with court. I believe we should have no problem getting caught up to date. So now we're going to go in. We're going to watch the opening statements, see what the state has to say, see what the defense has to say, skip through the first break, and hopefully get into the first witnesses that will be called in this case. So looking forward to following this. I anticipate this doesn't last longer than the week. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump in.
Please be seated.
Okay, good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. This is the call of the criminal list in Hamden County Superior Courtroom 2, Criminal Session 5. The Honorable Michael Callan presiding. Next matter is the trial of Commonwealth versus Blake Scanlon. Could the attorneys identify themselves for the record, please?
Good morning, Matthew Green on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Morning, Joseph Call-Flores for the Commonwealth.
Morning.
Good morning, Morris Elkins for Blake Scanlon.
Good morning, Eva Jellison for Blake Scanlon.
All right, good morning. So we're just waiting for Mr. Scanlon to be brought out.
Your Honor, I have a brief housekeeping matter once Mr. Scanlon is present.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna ask you both when he comes out, or there's anything we need to take up, and then there's a matter I need to take up with you, okay? All right, Mr. Scanlon's with us. Good morning, Mr. Scanlon. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Your Honor. The matter I wanted to address briefly deals with the sequestration order.
Yes.
The victim's mother, Jessica, is a testifying witness. She obviously has a invested interest in being present for most, if not all, of the trial. I would ask if the court would consider exempting her from the sequestration order.
She's your witness, Mr. Green?
She is.
Okay, all right.
And in so much as she would still be ordered not to discuss any of what she hears or sees in the courtroom with any other witness, but she would very much like to be present for openings and the first responding officers. I expect she would testify shortly after those individuals.
All right. Attorney Elkins, do you wish to be heard on that?
Yes, Your Honor, I would object. You know, it's common, it's the standard practice to sequester witnesses. I'd also note that Mr. Scanlon's mother is also on the witness list. And if Your Honor allows Ms. Bray to remain, I'd ask that Ms. Green also be allowed to remain.
So here's what I'll do. Those witnesses can stay for the openings, but when the testimony starts, they'll be sequestered, all right? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, there's a matter I need to take up with you. One of our jurors reported that it's the fellow in C5, Mr. Walsh? C5. He reported, I guess Friday, that he might remember something about this case in general. That's all that was reported, so I'm gonna bring him up. And I had him, when he reported today, put in a separate room from the rest of the jurors so that we could have a chance to talk to him before he met with the other jurors, and otherwise all 15 are here. So I'm gonna bring him out now and have a conversation with him. We're gonna have to have the pool camera shut off for our conversation with jurors, sir, okay? Because that will not be televised.
Your Honor. It seemed like that there was a couple of outstanding things. I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say you were going to call in a jury.
Yeah, I'm lining them up. So what do we want to talk about?
Well, I had asked you to consider a little bit more limiting rule regarding the cameras and their whether or not they aired the photos. And I hadn't seen any, further thought or remarks by yourself on that. And then also, we never really got a clear ruling on the number and amount of photos that would come in our motion to eliminate regarding the crime scene photos and autopsy photos. And I wondered and I'm not sure if that's intended to be brought in today. And
That's my question for Mr. Green. At what point in time do you want to be bringing those photos forward?
I expect today, potentially before lunch.
Okay. Then let's get through the, you're not going to use them in the openings?
No.
All right, so let's get through the openings on that, and then I'll make a ruling on those two aspects, so thank you for that. All set. I need those photos, Bill. I need those photos. Yeah, right. Good idea. We're in courtroom 2 for this trial. I want to start today like I start every day, and that's thanking you for your service, thanking you all. I know, got to meet you all last Wednesday when we paneled. I know that you're all very busy people, both professionally and personally, and that's a commitment, public service commitment that you're making to be here for this trial. I'll start every day by thanking you for that service. Questions I'll have for you every morning before we start are the following. Has any with anyone and the balance of those instructions since you were last in court Wednesday? I see no affirmative response. Has any member of the jury read, seen, heard, or overheard anything from any source about any aspect of this case outside of this courtroom since Wednesday that has affected or would affect your ability to consider this case as a fair and impartial juror? I see no affirmative response. And finally, is there any other serious matter or concern bearing on your service as jurors in this case that any juror wishes to bring to my attention at this time? I see no affirmative response. I'll ask that they be sworn now, please.
Okay, would you all please stand one more time and raise your right hands one more time? Do you all solemnly swear that you will do you all solemnly swear that you shall well and truly try the issue between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated.
Send to the department.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, hearken to your indictment, 19 CR 168. It has 2 counts. First count, murder, General Laws, Chapter 265, Section 1. The grand jurors for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on their oath present that Blake Scanlon, defendant herein of Westfield in the County of Hampden, on or about January 12, 2019 at Westfield in the County of Hampden did assault and beat Alexis Avery with intent to murder her, and by such assault and beating did kill and murder the said Alexis Avery in violation of General Laws, Chapter 265, Section 1. Count 2, assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. The grand jurors for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on their oath present that Blake Scanlon, defendant herein of Springfield in the County of Hampden, on or about January 12, 2019 at Westfield in the County of Hampden, did assault and beat Alexis Avery with a dangerous weapon, to wit a knife, in violation of General Laws, Chapter 265, Section 15A, Paragraph B. To the 2 counts of this indictment, the defendant has pleaded that he is not guilty and for trial thereof puts himself upon his country, which country you are. You are now sworn to try the issues. If he is guilty, you will say so. If he is not guilty, you will say so and no more. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, hearken to your evidence.
All right, members of the jury, you will be responsible for deciding this case, so please pay close attention to the evidence you will see and hear during the course of our trial. When the evidence is complete, I will explain the legal rules that you must apply to decide this case. You will then meet together in private to consider the evidence, apply the law as I give it to you, and work together to reach a verdict. Before we start the trial itself, I'm going to give you these initial instructions. I will explain the indictments that Mr. Walsh, our clerk, just read aloud and describe what will happen during the course of this trial. I'll also give you some information as to my role as the judge, the lawyers' respective roles, and your role, most importantly, as jurors. I will discuss some of the legal rules that apply in this case, and I'll explain some important things that you must do and must not do during the course of this trial. A moment ago, our clerk, Mr. Walsh, read the language of the indictments in this case. An indictment is simply a legal document that formally accuses someone of a crime. These indictments that were read to you are not evidence in this case, and the fact that Mr. Scanlon is facing these charges does not mean that he is guilty of committing any crime. As I told you when we were selecting you as jurors, Mr. Scanlon has pled not guilty to all of these charges. At the end of the trial, you, the jury, will decide whether the prosecution has proved these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. When I finish with these initial instructions, the prosecutor and the defense counsel will make opening statements. An opening statement is a summary of what the lawyer expects the evidence to show. After the opening statements, you will hear testimony from various witnesses. The evidence may also include documents and other things. The prosecution will call witnesses first, then the defendant will have the chance to call additional witness if the defendant chooses to do so. Both sides may question each witness. After you see and hear all the evidence, each side will make a closing argument to summarize the evidence and to suggest at that time conclusions that you may reach based upon the evidence in the law. The lawyer's opening statements and closing arguments may help you make sense of the evidence you hear and see in this courtroom, but the opening statements and closing arguments are not evidence. At the end of the trial, I'll give you, much like I'm doing now, I will read to you the legal rules, that is the law that you must apply in deciding this case. You'll then discuss the case in private in the jury deliberation room, which you are now all familiar with, to work together as a jury to reach a verdict. So my job as the judge of this case is to make sure that this case is tried fairly, efficiently, and according to the law. I must make sure that you hear and see only evidence that is allowed under our rules of evidence. Those rules determine what evidence the lawyers may and may not present to you. The purpose of these rules of evidence is to make sure that what you see and hear at this trial is relevant to the case and appropriate for you to consider. If one of the lawyers says the word objection, that means the lawyer thinks that a particular answer or exhibit violates the rules of evidence. If I'm not persuaded by the objection, I will say overruled. That means that the witness may show you the exhibit, and you may consider the answer or exhibit as evidence. If I instead say sustained when a lawyer makes an objection, that means that the witness may not answer the question or the party may not show you the exhibit, because under our rules of evidence, you may not consider the answer or exhibit. If I sustain an objection, you may not talk about or try to guess what the evidence might have been if I had let the question and answer be made. There may be times during the course of the trial when I instruct you or I tell you to disregard something or allow a motion to strike something that you've already heard or seen. If that happens, that means that the testimony or exhibit I tell you to disregard or that I strike is not evidence, and you may not consider it or even discuss it during the course of your deliberations. Again, as I mentioned to you before, at the end of this case, my final role with you is to instruct you on the law that you must apply at the conclusion of the case. I'm going to give you those instructions out loud like I'm doing right now, and I'm also going to give you a written version to take with you in the jury room as you work together to reach your verdict. The role of the lawyers now. The lawyers have their own important role in this trial. Their job is to bring to your attention the evidence and arguments that best support their respective positions. They may also object to evidence offered by the other side, as I told you about a few moments ago. Please do not hold it against the lawyers if they make an objection. The lawyers have to let me know when there's a potential issue about whether you may see, hear, or consider something. Now, your role as the jury. You have the most important role and job in this entire trial. After you've heard and seen all the evidence, the prosecution has proven Mr. Scanlon guilty of the crimes charged based upon the legal principles that I will explain to you. You must decide this case based only on the evidence you see and hear during this trial and on my instructions, that is the law that I give you at the conclusion of the case. You may not decide this case based upon suspicion, guesswork, or speculation, or based upon any type of emotion that you may feel during the trial. The evidence in the trial consists of the testimony of witnesses, as you recall it, and any documents or other things that become exhibits. Other things you will see and hear during the trial are not evidence. For example, as I told you, the openings and the closings are not evidence. The questions that the attorneys ask themselves are not evidence. A witness's answers are evidence, but the lawyer's questions are not. A very important part of your job and your role as jurors in this case is to decide who and what to believe. Whether the testimony is contradicted by any other evidence or not, it is entirely up to you to decide whether you believe it. You may believe everything that a witness says, part of what a witness says, or none at all of what a particular witness tells you. The same is true of each exhibit. You must decide whether you believe what it shows or not. In deciding who or what to believe, you should ask and consider some important questions. First, was the witness honestly trying to tell the truth or not? Though witnesses take an oath to tell the truth, sometimes the witness says things that the witness knows are false. If you conclude that a witness misled or did not tell the truth about something, then of course you should not believe that part of the testimony. Second, was the witness accurate, or did the witness get something wrong without meaning to do so? Sometimes a witness may recall seeing or hearing something but still be mistaken. If you conclude that a witness tried to be truthful but that some part of the witness's testimony was not accurate, then you should not consider the inaccurate testimony. I have no opinion whatsoever about what or who you should believe in this case. As I've explained to you, that's not my role. That is yours and yours alone. So please do not take anything that I say or anything that I do during the course of this trial to suggest to you what I think you ought to believe or how to decide this case. It's not my role. It's entirely yours. We choose jurors because we believe you, and I found you, that to be fair, open-minded, and are open-minded with respect to this case, and that you not favor either side when you evaluate the evidence and you decide this case. As I mentioned to you, do not let sympathy, prejudice, or personal likes or dislikes influence you in any way. You must consider the evidence calmly and carefully. Our system of justice depends on judges like me and jurors like you being able and willing to make careful and fair decisions. All people in this country deserve fair and equal treatment in our system of justice, regardless of their race, national origin, religion, age, ability, gender, education, income level, or any other personal characteristic. I'm sure that you want to be fair, but that is not always easy. One difficulty comes from our own built-in expectations and assumptions. Those assumptions exist even if we're not aware of them and even if we believe we do not have them. Some of you may have heard this called implicit bias, and that is what I'm talking about. We judges have the same problem, so let me share a few strategies that may be useful to you. First, slow down. Do not rush to any decisions. Hasty decisions are most likely to reflect stereotypes or hidden biases. Second, maintain and keep an open mind. Avoid drawing conclusions until the end of the case when you and your fellow jurors deliberate. Remember that when you deliberate, that is when you meet to discuss and decide the case, you will have all the evidence and truly all the time you need to make a careful decision, so there is no need to start making up your mind before then. Third, you should listen closely to all of the witnesses. That is the best way to ensure that you decide the case based on the evidence in the law instead of upon unsupported assumptions. Fourth, as you listen to the testimony about the people involved in this case, consider them as individuals rather than as members of a particular group. And finally, I might ask myself, would I view the evidence differently if the people were from different groups, such as different racial, ethnic, or gender identity groups? At the end of this case, I'm going to remind you of these strategies and ask that you focus on the evidence instead upon any unsupported assumptions that you may have. All that we ask of you, individually and as a group, is to do your best to resolve this case based upon the evidence and the law without sympathy, bias, or prejudice, to the best of your ability as human beings. I want to talk to you about, again, some legal rules that apply to this case. I told you about them when we picked you as jurors, but I want to remind you about them first of all. There is the presumption of innocence. Every person who is accused of a crime is presumed to be innocent of that crime. Mr. Scanlon is presumed to be innocent of the charges in this case. That means you must consider him to be innocent now, and you must still consider him to be innocent at the end of this trial unless the prosecution has proven beyond a reasonable doubt through the evidence that he committed the crimes charged. The defendant does not have to do anything to convince you that he is innocent. He does not have to explain anything. Under our Constitution, the defendant does not have to question witnesses or provide any evidence at all, because you must presume he is innocent. Instead, it is up to the Commonwealth to prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof never shifts to the defendant at all. At the end of this trial, after you've heard and seen all the evidence, you will deliberate with each other. If you have a reasonable doubt about the defendant's guilt on a particular charge, then your verdict must be not guilty on that charge. You may find Mr. Scanlon guilty only if all of the deliberating jurors agree that the Commonwealth has proven the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. So, again, we talked about this last Wednesday. I'm going to repeat it for you now. What is proof beyond a reasonable doubt? The term is often used and probably pretty well understood, although not easily defined. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean proof beyond all possible doubt, for everything in the lives of human beings is open to some possible or imaginary doubt. A charge is proved beyond a reasonable doubt if, after you have compared and considered all of the evidence, you have in your minds an abiding conviction to a moral certainty that the charge is true. When I refer to moral certainty, I mean the highest degree of certainty possible in matters relating to human affairs based solely on the evidence that has been put before you in the trial of this case. I've told you that every person is presumed to be innocent until he or she is proven guilty, and that the burden of proof is on the prosecutor. If at the end you evaluate all the evidence and you still have a reasonable doubt remaining, the defendant is entitled to the benefit of that doubt and must be acquitted. It is not enough for the Commonwealth to establish a probability or even a strong probability that the defendant is more likely to be guilty than not guilty. That is not enough. Instead, the evidence in this case must convince you of the defendant's guilt to a reasonable and moral certainty, a certainty that convinces your understanding and satisfies your reason and judgment as jurors who are now sworn to act conscientiously on the evidence. So, note-taking. When the evidence starts, that is after the opening statements are done and the evidence in the case starts, you will be allowed, that is permitted, to take notes during the course of the trial. When you meet to discuss this case at the end, that is to deliberate, we cannot provide you with a transcript of anything that occurs here in the courtroom. You're going to have to rely on your own memory of what occurred during the trial for your discussions. So you may take notes if you wish. I want to emphasize, you are not required to take notes. Some on how awesome of a note taker you are, how lousy of a note taker you are. Some jurors take some notes, some jurors take a lot of notes, some jurors take 0 notes. It's entirely up to you. It's entirely your decision. Whether you take notes or not, you will need to pay close attention to each witness and what they say. In deciding who or what to believe, you should watch and listen to each witness carefully. Think about whether the witness seems believable, whether the witness's memory seems reliable, and anything else about how the witness testifies and what the witness says that helps you decide whether and how much to believe the witness. Remember, as I mentioned to you now, your memory of what the witness has said and does on the witness stand during the course of the trial governs, not your notes. So do not assume because you or another juror wrote something down that it is more accurate than you or another juror's memory of what the witness actually said. So one last final piece about notes. Your notes are entirely confidential. No one, including me, will ever read the notes. The court officers collect the notebooks at the end of each day and keep them safe until they're returned to you the next morning. They're not kept in the record. They're not a permanent part of any record in this case. They're entirely yours, and they will be shredded at the conclusion of the case, so they're not part of the record in normal. Please raise. We'll make the necessary adjustments, as I mentioned. Break for to bring me. One last thing about logistics here. They're designed to point out so that they pick up what people are saying. They're relatively sensitive, so the mic is always on. So if you happen to say something to a fellow juror in the box at any point in time, there's a possibility that you get picked up on the microphone, and we don't want that to happen. So please keep in mind that the mics near you are live, and be cautious about that. So I know, I've met you all, got a chance to meet on Wednesday in some detail when I met you at the side of the bench with the lawyers. I know that you're going to try this case in accordance with the oath that Mr. Walsh just gave to you in open court. When you took that oath, you promised that you would, quote, well and truly try the issues between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the law, end of quote. If you follow that oath, approach this case with an open mind and make your decisions fairly and without prejudice or bias or sympathy for anyone, then you will in the end arrive at a fair and just verdict. It is now time for the opening statements. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Morning, folks. Anyone set to testify? With the exception of Ms. Gray, or Ms. Gray and Ms. Green, please step out into the hallway. Counsel will come get you as soon as we can.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It was over. I'm going to ask you to keep that phrase in mind throughout the course of this trial. It was over. On January 1st of 2019, New Year's Day, Alexis Avery told the defendant, Mr. Scanlon, that their relationship was over. They had dated off and on again for several years and tried to make it work. In June of 2018, they got an apartment together at 92 White Street in the city of Westfield, and they moved in. Alexis was pregnant at the time with the defendant's baby, and in August of 2018, a baby girl, Darla, was born. Still, things weren't working out between the two of them. And on New Year's Day, Alexis told the defendant that their relationship had come to an end. On Friday, January 11th, 2019, so just about 10 or 11 so days later, Alexis made plans that night to go out with her close friend, Caitlin Avery, who's also her cousin, and you will hear from Caitlin during the course of this trial. They were going to have a girls' night out. It had been a long time. Alexis dropped her baby off at her grandmother's house and borrowed her mother's car, Jessica's car, and you'll hear from Jessica as well. Alexis and Caitlin went back to their apartment on White Street to get ready for the night. So it's about 7 or 8 o'clock. They are doing their makeup and getting dressed and just doing normal things, getting ready for the evening. The defendant, Mr. Scanlon, was there at first, and he was, as you will hear, described by the witnesses, acting mopey and sad and saying things like, "I can't believe my family is leaving." Around 8 o'clock, the defendant went over to his friend's house. Alexis and Caitlin didn't make plans with the defendant. They didn't intend to meet up with him that night. She was looking forward to spending the night with Caitlin. Now, about the same time, Alexis actually changed her Facebook profile to single and started talking to a guy at work that she had a crush on. His name, you will hear, is Scott Burns. And Scott Burns will testify in this case as well. Scott and Alexis worked together, and that night Alexis and Scott made plans to meet up and have a drink. About 9 p.m. Friday night, Alexis and Caitlin go to a bar in Westfield called the Maple Leaf Cafe, and things are going fine. Scott, the guy she was interested in, and one of his co-workers showed up about an hour or so after Alexis got there, and they were hitting it off. Alexis and Scott were flirting and talking to each other. He was buying them drinks. But you'll hear from Alexis's cousin, Caitlin, that she kept checking her cell phone and was vigilant to see where the defendant physically was, because they shared their location together. And what you will hear is that the defendant was at his friend's house, which is what she anticipated. So at that point, all things were going fine. Now, a little bit later in the night, Alexis and Scott really started to hit it off, and they were at the bar at the Maple Leaf kissing. Sometime around, the defendant shows up at the Maple Leaf with a friend. Caitlin went over to Alexis immediately and said, "Hey, cool it. Blake just got here." They decided they wanted to go someplace else. So they paid their tabs and they went over to another bar in town. This is probably around 11 now, called Whip City Brewery, or the Whip. So they paid their tabs, they went over to the Whip. They told Scott and his friend where they were going so they could meet up with them. And as they began to walk outside, the defendant rushed after Alexis, and there was a conversation that Caitlin couldn't hear, but again, things seemed. Around 11:30 at night, Alexis and Caitlin drove over to the second bar, the Whip, and Scott and his friend showed up shortly thereafter, as was planned. 30 minutes or so after that, the defendant once again showed up at the Whip. And this time he was alone. His friend wasn't there. Caitlin Avery will describe the defendant to you, standing in the corner alone, staring at Alexis and Scott, who were still flirting. And I expect you'll see some pictures of the inside of these two bars. They're not big. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but you'll hear from a Westfield detective who is familiar with both places, obviously, who took some pictures. These are small venues, so it's fair to say that the defendant saw what was happening with Alexis and Scott. At some point in the night, Caitlin Avery actually grabbed the defendant, Blake, who she obviously knew, and brought him outside and said something to him like, "What are you doing? You know you're breaking up." And then the defendant said something like, "How could she do this to me? And why the fuck is that dude hugging her?" Caitlin goes, "Listen, they're co-workers, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal." But again, they're breaking up, so it shouldn't have been. The defendant says, "If I see that shit again, I'm gonna fuck him up." Caitlin goes back inside, finds Alexis, kind of gives her the lowdown. "Hey, maybe you want to cool it a little bit with Scott." At some point in the night, Alexis, who you'll hear drove her mother's car to the bar that night, misplaced her key fob. And so she was trying to find her key fob. Caitlin was trying to help her find her key fob. Even the defendant at some point was trying to help her find this key fob for Jessica's mother's car, a Mazda. Now, 1 o'clock in the morning, Alexis kind of disappears from the bar. The defendant was still there, Caitlin was still there. The defendant was asking Caitlin, "Where is she? Where is she? I can't find her." And as it got later and closer to closing time, Caitlin became more paranoid because Alexis was her ride home and she couldn't find her. Alexis and Scott had gone out into the parking lot. They got into the back of his truck and they were having sex, Alexis and Scott Burns. The defendant walked up to Scott Burns' truck, saw what was happening, opened the door, and according to what I expect you'll hear from Scott Burns, in an oddly calm demeanor for what he is seeing, he simply says to Alexis, "Get your things, let's go." But not before she tells Blake Scanlon, "I don't want to be with you, I want to be with him, Scott." The defendant barely acknowledged Scott. He certainly did not fuck him up. He simply asked Alexis to get her things. They got into her car and they drove home to their apartment on White Street in Westfield. Caitlin did get home that night, but she never saw Alexis Avery alive again. Nobody did. Because that night, Blake Scanlon murdered her. He waited until they were alone, back at their apartment. Then he got a kitchen knife and he stabbed Alexis Avery 28 times. He stabbed her in the neck, piercing her jugular. He stabbed her over and over again during her midsection. Some of those wounds were so deep that they lacerated and damaged many of her major organs. He slashed her face. He stabbed her in the back. And Alexis had what the medical examiner will describe as defensive wounds. Wounds all up and down her arms. The medical examiner will tell you that there was actually literally no blood left in Alexis Avery's heart. She bled out on the kitchen floor of their apartment. Their relationship was over, but the defendant made sure that it was over for Alexis. And if he couldn't have her, nobody was going to have her. The defendant then attempted to injure himself. Can't tell you exactly when during the course of this day or day and a half that's going to be crucial that follows that happened. But he did cut his own wrists, superficial wounds. He even tried to light some debris underneath the gas stove, and you'll hear from an arson investigator about that. But that didn't do anything either. The defendant spent the next day and a half, approximately, delaying the inevitable. On Saturday morning, Alexis's mother, Jessica, started to try and contact her. She had to pick up her baby, she had things to do. Pretty normal stuff for a mom to try and contact her daughter, especially since her baby was with her grandmother. And Jessica started to receive replies from Alexis's phone. It started off by saying, Blake and I aren't feeling great. Can Grandma watch the baby for another night? I just can't. I'm not in a good headspace. And then you'll see numerous calls and texts from Jessica to Alexis Avery's phone throughout the entire course of that day on Saturday. And you will see that those calls and text messages went from concern to alarm to full-blown panic. Because on Sunday morning, Alexis still had not picked up her baby. And Jessica, who you will hear from, Alexis's mother, had a sneaking suspicion, call it mother's intuition, that something was not right. She had not heard her daughter's voice since Friday. She had received text messages from her phone, but she had not heard her voice. At this point in time, Alexis's mother, Jessica, in a last desperate attempt, sends a message at about 11 in the morning to Alexis's phone. Kind of foreboding. She says, I'm not playing. You know I watch too much Dateline. If I don't hear your voice, I am calling the police and I am coming over there. And that's just before 11 a.m. on Sunday. And at 11:02 a.m., the defendant calls 911 himself. You'll hear that call. It's about 8 minutes long. The defendant calls 911 and tells the 911 dispatcher that he needs help because he had tried to cut his wrists and he was bleeding. And then he volunteers to the 911 dispatcher, I stabbed my girlfriend on Friday after I caught her cheating on me. Police and paramedics, of course, as they do, when you call 911, show up. The defendant is still holding the phone that he's on the 911 call with at the time. The first officer who responds tells him to put the phone down and make sure that the area is safe and secure. That officer will tell you that he noticed Alexis Avery's body in the kitchen. This is a very small apartment, and you'll see pictures of it. You'll see Alexis Avery was on the kitchen floor, and it was a fairly bloody, gruesome crime scene. The officer approaches the defendant on the couch, who's holding this phone, realizes that he's not in any danger, holsters his weapon, and says to the defendant, essentially, what happened? And the defendant, once again, openly admits to Officer Bradley, I stabbed her on Friday after I caught her cheating. The defendant is evaluated on the scene by paramedics, transported to Noble Hospital, where he is treated and released that same day for superficial lacerations to his wrists. And then a very thorough, as you would expect, investigation ensued. State police became involved in the investigation, Westfield police, the crime scene analysis unit from the state police came and processed the scene. You're going to hear from all of the witnesses about all the work that went into this investigation. And I'm going to suggest to you that the evidence is going to be quite substantial. There will be no question in your minds at the conclusion of this trial as to who killed Alexis Avery in the early morning hours of January 12th of 2019. There will be no question at all about how Alexis Avery died. The medical examiner will tell you 28 sharp force wounds, any number of which were potentially fatal in and of themselves. Once you hear all the facts listen to all the witnesses and see all of the evidence in this case, I suggest to you that you will also have no doubts in your mind, no questions at all left, that the defendant committed first-degree murder when he stabbed Alexis Avery 28 times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Attorney Elkins.
Good morning. After what you just heard, I think perhaps you might be relieved about what I'm about to say next. The question in this trial won't be if you find Mr. Scanlon guilty. It will be what you find him guilty of. We start there. You heard a lot from the judge already about the presumption of innocence and how the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So you might be asking yourself, how do I square what I just said to you with that? And this is what I mean when I say the question here isn't if, but of what. I mean this: the indictment alleges murder, but you will learn that this trial, and when we put folks on trial for a crime like this, that it's not just as simple as innocent or guilty, convict or acquit. You'll be told what the law is in this Commonwealth and what it means when we talk about first-degree murder and second-degree murder and other forms of homicide. And so, if you experienced any relief at all when I did suggest to you how I expect this case to end, I would also say that in some ways what you're being asked to do is among the hardest things we ever ask a jury to do, which is to think very carefully and listen very carefully to all of the evidence and not just focus on the outcome, but all of the circumstances surrounding that. So ADA Green has suggested here that this is all very straightforward. But I would suggest, and I will tell you that I expect that the evidence is not going to show you that was simply that it was over. The evidence is going to show that Miss Avery and Mr. Scanlon, in fact, had a lengthy on-again, off-again relationship. And that at the time that this happened, they had been on again for quite a long time, since their daughter was born in August and since before that, through her pregnancy. And that on January 11th, yes, you are going to hear evidence that they were contemplating the end of the relationship, but they still had a home together. They still lived together. They were still parenting together. Can appreciate that the evidence is going to show that as young people who had been together a long time and as brand new parents, who the evidence is going to show had both hoped and had every expectation of parenting that child together, that even if they weren't together, that as long as they were still living in the same home and until they were not, that they were still operating with this certain kind of relationship. Now here's what's not in dispute. Ms. Avery hooked up that night with a coworker, a man that she had not been out with previously. She wasn't carrying on a long-term affair with this young man. That was the first night that they had been together. And it's not in dispute that when Mr. Scanlon came to the whip, they weren't just flirting, but that she was making out. Miss Avery was making out with Mr. Burns. And then knowing full well that he was at the bar, went directly outside and had sex with Mr. Burns in his truck. Now, you're also going to be asked to think about the evidence about what happened after Mr. Scanlon discovered them in the truck. There are going to be questions that I'm asking you to pay attention to. How long did it take for them to get home? The evidence is going to show you that from the time Mr. Scanlon found Ms. Avery and Mr. Burns together in the truck, to the time they got home was an incredibly short period of time. Minutes. How that discussion continued after they were in the truck, after they were on the ride home, and what happened in the moments after they got home. And that's all very important because, as I said before, it's not the case that we can just look at the terrible outcome here and decide that's it. It's all very straightforward. I don't have to think about this anymore. In fact, you're going to have to think about very hard questions indeed about what all of the circumstances mean. Now, I also want to make it clear that when I say that the law asks this of you, I am not suggesting that the law says that what happened here was okay and not worthy of punishment. It's that the law says that you must presume Mr. Scanlon innocent, and the Commonwealth must prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt before you convict him of any crime. So that brings us back to where I started, which is to say, to put what I said at the beginning of my remarks another way, and because the law says, and you must presume Blake Scanlon innocent, I will be asking you to find that the Commonwealth has not proven beyond a reasonable doubt Blake Scanlon guilty of some of not guilty of first-degree murder. I ask you to listen carefully. I ask you to keep to all the questions and to be prepared to do and apply the law at the end of this case the judge tells you must be applied. It's not easy, but after speaking with all of you to select this jury, I'm very confident that you can, and I trust you with this job.
Thank you very much, Attorney Elkins. I'm going to have her take our morning break now because there's a few matters I need to talk about. So remember I said when we picked, we'll take our morning break at kind of usually 11 o'clock, but at a point in time that might be logical. It's a logical time for us here before we start the witnesses in the case. So the morning break is now. We'll see you back here in about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll go from that point until 1 o'clock. All right?
Very excellent.
First,
All right.
so that I would then ask she be exempted from the sequestration. The entire phone printout and
So I just wanted to back and forth between Ms. Avery.
Okay, we are prepared to start with the evidence in the trial. Attorney Green.
thank you. The Commonwealth would call Ms. Jessica Vasquez-Bray at this time.
Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you will give this court and jury in the case now on trial shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please take the witness stand.
Oh, no.
Go ahead. How you guys doing now, buddy?
Take the cup, pass it down.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Attorney Green.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I know it's difficult, but in a loud, as clear a voice as you can you please tell everybody your full name and spell your last name?
Yes, Jessica Vasquez Bray, B-R-A-Y,
And how old are you, ma'am?
42,
What town?
Mass.
How long have you lived in Westfield?
Oh gosh, since I was 11.
Do you work?
I do.
Where do you work?
I work at Westfield Bank.
How long have you worked? Who was Alexis Avery?
She's my daughter.
And what was her date of birth?
April 20th, 1998.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Your Honor? Tell me who's depicted in that photograph.
Alexis.
And do you know approximately when this was taken?
That was her pregnancy photo shoot, so sometime in 2018.
No, I would go off this first.
Exhibit 1.
Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
May I briefly start this?
Yes.
Displaying exhibit number 1. That was your daughter.
Yes.
Is your daughter still with us?
She's not.
Do you know who Blake Scanlon is?
I do.
And how do you know him?
He dated my daughter on and off.
Do you see him in the courtroom?
I do.
Could you just point to him, describe a color shirt he's wearing?
It's right over there. And a jacket.
Thank you. Your Honor, may the record reflect in-court identification of the defendant?
She pointed in the defendant's direction, yes.
Thank you. Who is Darla?
Darla's my granddaughter. We adopted her, but yes, Alexis had a baby with Blake.
And when was Darla born?
She was born August 1st, 2018.
Do you know approximately how long Alexis and the defendant had dated off and on?
I want to say I remember 2016, we did like a family vacation. I remember him being there, so I would say around that time through January 1st.
And in June of 2018, where were your daughter and the defendant living?
On White Street in Westfield, an apartment.
And a few weeks before January 11th, the New Year's Day or so, did you have an occasion to see Alexis?
I did.
And did she tell you anything about her relationship with the defendant?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
May we approach briefly sidebar?
So during the course of the trial, we have what we call
When was the last time that you actually saw Alexis, if you remember?
Yes, it was the evening of January 11th, Friday,
And where did you see her?
at my house.
And why was she at your house?
She came to borrow the car with Caitlin,
Okay. Borrow whose car?
my car.
All right. And what kind of car was that?
It was a 2007 Mazda CX-9.
Do you know why she was borrowing your car that night, if you know?
Yeah, like their car didn't, Caitlin's car didn't run well, and they just wanted to have like a safe, decent car for the evening.
Okay. Do you recall approximately what time she came over to borrow your car?
It was in the evening. I don't remember the exact time.
Okay. And then Saturday, what did you do?
I was at work, and I was trying to get a hold of her, so I was texting her.
Okay. And where was Darla on Friday night, the baby?
She was at my mom's house.
Okay. And does mom have a name or nickname that you called her?
Wella?
Okay. Saturday morning, if you know, did Alexis pick up Wella?
Saturday morning, no.
Okay. Was she supposed to?
She was supposed to pick up the baby.
At some point in time, you mentioned you tried to get in touch with
I did.
Alexis. Is that right?
Yes.
And what is your phone number, if you know?
It's 413.
Is that the same number you would have had back in 2018, 2019?
Yes.
And did you have Alexis's phone number programmed into your phone?
I did.
Do you happen to recall that number offhand?
No, because I don't remember anybody's. Just go right to the name and dial it.
I
It's
understand.
unfortunate.
If you saw it, you think it would help jog your
Yes.
memory? May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Did that help your memory?
Yes.
And what do you recall your daughter's phone number being?
The 55.
And 557?
Yeah.
Were you ever able to physically speak with Alexis during Saturday, January 12th?
No.
How did you communicate with her?
It was a text message.
To her phone?
Correct.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to show you this item. Do you recognize that item?
I do.
What do you recognize that item to be?
Alexis's phone.
White iPhone with gold sparkly case?
Yes.
ID only.
E for identification.
And you mentioned...
Explain to the jury, matters marked for identification are not exhibits, evidence in the case at this time. All right?
You mentioned that Alexis borrowed your car. Is that right?
Yes.
You recognize what this is?
It's the key fob for my car.
And the key's actually in here?
Correct.
So this is like your spare set?
Yeah, that was a spare.
I have this marked for identification as well.
ID only.
F.
Beth.
Did you hear from did you hear her voice at any point on Saturday?
I never heard her voice again since she picked up the car.
And you continued to try and communicate with her?
I did.
Did you call?
I did.
Did you text?
Yeah.
show you these 10 pages. Take a minute and just look through them without saying anything. When you're done, look up, please. Can you just tell me what those pictures are of generally?
The text messages that I was sending out and text messages I was getting back.
And just so we're all clear, there's blue messages.
Yeah, those are.
Who's the, if you know, who's sending the blue messages?
I am.
And there's actually a picture of you right next to the
Correct.
message. So that was programmed into a phone, presumably.
Yes.
And messages are to Alexis at the top.
Alexis's, yep.
I have the
ID G. G.
Did you try and contact Alexis again on Sunday morning?
I did.
Could you describe your level of concern at that point?
I was very concerned.
Your Honor.
Overruled.
I was very concerned. I hadn't heard her voice, and I asked her to call me so I can hear her voice. And I
Okay. And where was Darla Sunday morning?
she was with me at the time. I went to pick her up instead. I just wasn't.
Would it be unlike Alexis to leave her baby for 2 days?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, crosses in.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much. Attorney Green.
Your Honor, at this time, the call will call Margaret Turkelson.
Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you will give the court and jury in the case now on trial shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
In a loud and clear voice, as best you can you just introduce yourself to the jurors by name and spell your last name?
Yep, my name is Margaret Turkelson. It's Terkelsen.
Thank you. And are you currently employed?
Yes.
And in what capacity are you currently employed?
I work for the Animal Control Department at the City of Westfield.
All right. And now I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go back in time a little bit to 2019. Did you work for the town of Westfield in a different capacity at that time?
I did.
And did you work at that time?
I was a dispatcher.
All right. And what are your general job responsibilities as a dispatcher?
Answering business line and emergency 911 calls that the public make.
Okay. And did you receive any training on how to be a 911 dispatcher?
Yeah, we receive training in person, and then we get sent out for certification. So we get certified to answer 911 calls.
And did you go through that process?
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
I want to direct your attention to January 13 of 2019. Were you working as a dispatcher that morning?
I was.
All right. And are you aware, just generally based on your job, are 911 calls recorded?
They are, yes.
All right. And what's the first thing you usually say when somebody calls 911?
We explain that the line is recorded, and then we ask usually for the address of the emergency.
All right. And did you take a approximately 8-minute phone call that morning around 11 o'clock?
I did.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm just going to show you this CD. If you could just turn it over, look at the front and the back. Do you recognize any initials on the back of that?
Yes, my initials are on it.
All right. And what's the date that you wrote your initials on it?
March 12th of this year.
All right. And on March 12th of this year, did you have an opportunity to review this 8-minute phone call?
I did.
I'm going to play a short clip at first for you, ma'am.
Are you going to offer that are you offering that?
I am. I just want the witness to be able to identify. Speakers working. So I'm just going to ask you to listen like the first 10, 15 seconds.
The final report, what's the address of your emergency?
9213, second floor. Do you recognize anybody's voice in that call?
Yeah, my voice.
Okay. And you've recently reviewed this entire 8-minute call?
Yes.
Is this a fair and accurate duplicate of the actual call that you took on January 13th, 2019 at about 11 a.m.?
Yes.
And I would offer this at this time.
All right.
Objection.
Without objection, it'll be Exhibit 2.
With the court's permission, you can go there, please.
Yes. Full exhibit. We'll play it.
For the record, Exhibit 2.
And what's the phone number you're calling from? Okay. And what's going on today?
We know. I killed my girlfriend after I caught the cheating on me.
Okay. We're going to help out here now.
Okay.
Okay, how old are you, sir?
23.
What do you mean by bleeding out, sir?
I cut my wrist.
You cut your wrist?
Oh, yeah. Passed out. I cut it right up.
Okay, are you feeling violent?
No.
Do you have weapons with you?
No. No. That's all.
Where are you right now?
I'm in my bedroom laying down playing. Can't breathe.
Okay. Is this a suicide attempt?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're... Is your bleeding serious?
Yes. Body lost a lot of blood.
Okay. Alright. Alright, I'm sending the paramedics to help you now. Stay in line. I'll tell you exactly what to do next. Okay. I'm going to tell you how to stop the bleeding. Listen carefully to make sure we do it right, okay?
Okay, you already started the clock, so.
Okay, well, we're just going to do this though, okay?
Okay.
If you can get a clean, dry cloth or towel and place it right on the wound and press down firmly and don't lift it up to look.
Okay.
Okay? Have you done that?
Yeah, I got a blanket.
Okay. All right. Is the bleeding controlled now?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. All right, help is on the way. From now on, don't have anything to eat or drink. It may give you bigger costs for other problems. Don't move
I was
around.
already vomiting. I was in trouble with it.
Okay. Just rest in a comfortable position for you, okay?
Okay.
I'll stay on line with you as long as I can. If anything changes, just let me know and tell me when the paramedics get there. Okay. So are you still laying on bed?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, what's your name, sir?
Blake.
What's your last name, Blake? Scanlon? Okay, Blake. Blake, what happened to your girlfriend?
I caught her cheating on me and I killed her.
And how did you do that?
That's her.
You stabbed her? Is she there?
Yeah, she's been pissed and truck. I passed out the bleeding and I passed out. I thought I was dead. I'm not.
So she's been there since Friday. She's been dead since Friday.
Friday morning, I believe. Yeah.
Have you told anyone about it?
No. I just haven't had enough strength to finish filming, so.
Okay. What's your girlfriend's name, Blake?
Alexis Avery.
Alexis Avery?
She was abusive and mentally abusive and she's shocking face.
Okay. We're gonna get you help right now, Blake. They're on their way already, okay?
Okay.
Is the door unlocked, Blake?
No.
The door is not unlocked? Are you able to just get to the door and unlock it?
Try.
Okay, I'm gonna stand while I with you while you try to do that, okay? Alright. Just take your time to do it and just let me know when you're able to get there, okay?
So, like, minute. Okay, so
The door's unlocked, okay, you just rest and just keep breathing for me, okay, Blake?
okay.
You're doing a good job. We have people out there almost there. Okay? So, do you still have your wounds covered? You do still have it covered? Blake, are you still there? Blake? Can you hear me, Blake? Okay, do you still have your arms covered?
Yes.
You still putting pressure on your wounds? Blake, do you see anybody outside?
No.
No, you don't.
Just anything.
You can't see anyone. And you said you're on the second floor?
They have to go to the back of the driveway.
They have to go to the back of the driveway? Okay. And you're on the second floor. Okay, we have people coming to you. You're on the couch still, Blake?
Yes.
Okay. Is the back door unlocked?
Yes.
Okay. You're doing great, Blake.
All right, they're here.
They're here? Okay.
Yes.
Are you talking to them now, Blake?
Yes.
Who's on scene with you?
Got it. That won't be my blood. Need an ambulance. Blood out, that passed out. I can't even move.
Is that the end of the recording?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Any questions?
There you go.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Oates.
How was the call, Officer Bradley, Westville Police Department?
Uncle Bradley.
Evidence you will give this court and jury in the
If you could just in a loud and clear voice introduce yourselves.
Michael Bradley, BRA.
And Westfield.
32 years.
Officer at that time.
Yes, I was. A marked cruiser that day, southwest sector, car 18, single man cruiser.
All right. And did you respond to that 92 White Street address?
Yes, I did.
Did it take you long to get there? Again, just in general.
Been a while. It wouldn't have taken very long because that's the south side of town. So.
Did you activate your emergency equipment and go directly to that location?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you got to 92 White Street, who else was there from law enforcement, if you recall?
Officer Pellin and Officer Grady.
All right. So the three of you initially?
Yes, sir.
What did you do when you got to the residence?
We ended up going to the back of the house and went up the back staircase. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I knocked on the door. I found the door ajar, knocked, announced that police. As the door opened up, I could hear a voice in the apartment say, "I'm here, I'm here."
All right. When you went into or got into the apartment, do you recall like what general area you entered into?
It was right off of the kitchen area and the back of the apartment.
As you entered into the apartment and went, did you have to go through the kitchen to get to the other location?
Yes.
Did you make any immediate observations in the kitchen?
Yes. As I walked through the kitchen, on the floor, observed a female body laying on the floor face up, covered in blood, blood on the cabinets, blood on the floor. And observing her, she was deceased and beyond care. I also observed a knife, a bloody knife on the counter in the kitchen.
After you made those observations, did you go towards the voice?
I did. And there was a drape covering the doorway. Pulled my service weapon, pulled the drape back, observed a male laying on a couch, asked the male to show me his hands, which he did. He complied. I entered into the back room, holstered my weapon, gloved up, came over to the male. He was still on a cell phone at the time, kind of cradling it between his neck and his shoulder. Took that from him, put it on the couch, and I looked at his wrists, because that was the initial call. And he had some dried, bloody cuts to his wrists, and I asked him what had happened.
And what did he say, if anything?
He said that he had stabbed his girlfriend, Alexis.
Did he say when?
I believe he said Friday.
Okay. And just so we're clear, you're responding at what time?
This was Sunday morning.
At about 11?
11 o'clock. That was a day and change later.
That person that you encountered that morning, do you see him in this courtroom?
I do.
Could you point to him and describe the color shirt he's wearing?
Male party, brown hair, gray shirt.
Your Honor, may the record reflect identification of the defendant?
Yes, he was pointing in that direction.
Did the male party identify himself to you?
He did.
And how did he do that? Did he tell you his name?
He did. He said his name was Blake Scanlon.
Did you ask him who the person in the kitchen was?
I did, and he told me that was his girlfriend, Alexis Avery.
Okay. May I approach the bench, Your Honor?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Can I see you both quickly on something?
Yes.
Yes.
You mentioned, Officer Bradley, that when you encountered Mr. Scanlon, you was on the phone.
Yes.
Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
And what do you recognize this item is?
The cell phone that Blake was speaking on at the time.
And you told him to put this down?
I took it from him
Where did you put it?
on the couch right next to us.
Did paramedics arrive at the residence as well?
They did.
Did they arrive shortly after you?
Shortly after, and once my scene was safe, I summoned them in to take care of Blake.
Okay. After the paramedics went in and did their thing, what was the rest of your role, kind of, at that moment?
Once they tended to him, they took him outside to the ambulance. Myself and Officer Pellin secured the apartment until state police was notified and showed up on scene.
When you say secured the apartment, you made sure that nobody came or went in?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I have no more questions for Officer Bradley.
Just a couple here, officer. So when, just want to make sure we're very clear on some things. So when you came into the apartment that day, Mr. Scanlon did have wounds on his wrists, is that correct?
Yes.
And by the time you arrived, they weren't actively bleeding anymore?
They didn't appear to be, no.
Okay. But you did bring the ambulance workers in once they arrived because it appeared he needed care, correct?
That was the initial call, yes.
And when you came in, he didn't get up from the couch in any way?
No.
And he certainly didn't threaten you or argue with you or become violent in any way?
No.
No further questions?
Anything further, Mr. Green?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you, officer. Thank you.
Your Honor, the call will call paramedic Ben Hogan.
Ben Hogan.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
In a loud and clear voice, would you please introduce yourself to the jurors and spell your last name?
My name is Ben Hogan, Hogan.
How old are you, sir?
37.
What town do you live in?
I live in Southampton.
All right. And what do you do for a profession, sir?
Full-time firefighter paramedic for the city of Westfield.
All right. And how long have you been a firefighter paramedic in Westfield?
It'll be 9 years and about 2 weeks.
All right. Prior to being a paramedic in Westfield, do you have any other medical training or experience?
Yes, this summer will be my 20th year working pre-hospital emergency medicine. I was a combat medic for the Army for 4 years. Worked as a EMT and paramedic in the cities of Springfield and Holyoke, as well as in Virginia.
And just, you don't have to go into great detail, but just can you highlight the difference between the training an EMT receives and a paramedic, or what?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So everyone's an EMT. An EMT basic goes to school for approximately 1 semester, 3 months. They don't do any clinical time, so they don't do any training in the hospital or in the field. Once they take their training, they go to state certification and they get certified, and then they learn all on the job. Whereas a paramedic, it's about a 1.5 to 2 year program. Half the time you're in a didactic section in a classroom, then you have to do several hundred hours in an emergency room. You're work in the operating room, deliver babies, and then you do field time. So then you work for 300 hours riding with a paramedic FTO.
Before you're
even certified.
Right. And you went through all those steps?
Yes.
I want to direct your attention now to, did you receive a call on January 13th, 2019, shortly after 11 a.m.?
Yes.
All right, and where did you go as a result of that call?
I forget the exact address. I don't have the...
if I told you 92 White Street, does that sound familiar?
White Street, yeah.
All right. And were you working alone, or was there somebody, did you have somebody with you in the ambulance?
We always have a partner. My partner that day was Lee Kazakowski, who was also a firefighter paramedic.
All right. And when you first got to 92 White Street, were there other law enforcement people present?
Yeah, PD was just showing up on scene as we pulled in.
What did you do when you got there? Did you wait for the police?
Yeah, initially we always wait if there's potentially anything dangerous on scene. We let the police department clear it prior to us going on scene.
Did they do that in this case?
Yes, they did.
And did at some point they tell you?
Yeah, the scene is safe and we go in.
What'd you do?
Sorry. We went in the back staircase. PD was in the living room time, and when we walked in, we saw a deceased body in the kitchen, and then our patient was in the back living room sitting on a couch with an officer with him.
And your focus, did you focus more on the person in the kitchen or the person on the couch?
Since we're a two-person team with training, we both split. My partner initially went to the deceased female in the kitchen, and I went to the back room to the other patient.
All right. And where was that patient located?
On a couch, sitting on a couch.
All right. Do you see that person in the courtroom here today?
Yes, sir.
Could you point to him and just describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
Right over there is a shirt and suit on.
Thank you.
Shirt and coat.
Your Honor, may the record reflect identification of the... Thank you. Did you make an initial assessment, a medical assessment?
Yeah, our initial call was for self-inflicted knife wounds or self-inflicted cuts. So we assessed the patient real quick, and then the bleeding was already self-controlled, self-clotted off, so we bandaged the wounds.
Okay. Did that person say anything to you while he was on the couch and you were looking at him?
Yeah, he kept profusely apologizing.
Okay. And could you describe in any more detail the lacerations that you observed?
They were more or less superficial horizontal cuts bilaterally on the wrists.
Okay. And you mentioned that was he actively bleeding?
No, there was no active bleeding when we were there.
What did you do after you made that initial assessment? Did you transport him somewhere?
Yeah, we moved him from upstairs, put him in the back of the ambulance. Sorry. We gave him IVs, put him on a cardiac monitor, administered IV fluid, and transported him to Noble.
Okay. Once you transport
to the hospital, we do a changeover, or just give the nurse and the doctor the report of the patient.
And I know your primary focus wasn't the female in the kitchen, but did you see her, make observations of her?
Yes, after my partner, he went.
Just a very brief, high-level assessment of her in the kitchen.
There was were present.
Did you or your partner even attempt life-saving measures?
No.
Okay. So fair to say, was she transported?
Good morning.
Good morning.
When you came into the room and gave some treatment to Mr. Scanlon, he didn't immediately get off the couch at that point in time, correct?
Correct. He stayed sitting there.
Okay. And it's fair to say he was physically weak at
thoughts, they appear to be stable.
My question was, did he appear to be physically weak at that?
I don't believe so. I don't recall.
Okay. But he wasn't getting up off the couch, correct?
There was a police officer keeping him there.
Okay. And he had wounds that obviously needed... now, you did a quick assessment of Miss Avery in this case, is that correct?
Yes, after I attended to him.
That she had clear signs of... She was in a state of rigor mortis at that point in time?
Correct.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Okay. In this matter, or contributed
For Mr. Scanlon.
and that it's relative to Miss Avery's body. Is that fair?
I believe I wrote that.
You don't rigor mortis, correct?
Yes.
And in your experience and training, that means that she'd been deceased for some...
Set in, so I can't speak expertly on that.
Okay, but in your onset doesn't happen immediately.
Correct. Correct.
No further questions.
Nothing further.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hogan. You're all set.
Thank you.
The call Trooper Christofori, please.
Christopher.
solemnly. I do. Thank you. Please take the witness stand.
Morning, Your Honor. Morning, counsel. Morning, jurors.
I'm sorry, we just need to have something in my office.
Your Honor, that was all. All right.
I believe we're getting that.
Yeah, not a problem.
All right. Let's start off with you just introducing yourself to the jurors, please.
Certainly. My name is Jason Cristofori. Last name is spelled Christofori.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm employed by the Massachusetts State Police, and I'm currently assigned to the Office of the Hamden District Attorney, State Police Detective Unit.
And how long have you been a trooper in total?
Approximately 8 years. About 6.
Working as a detective in the role you're in now?
Certainly. So we are known as a homicide and major case unit. Our primary focus is homicide investigations, but we certainly provide support assistance for major violent crimes, missing and exploited children, property crimes, and so on.
So were you working on January 13th of 2019 in this same capacity as a detective in the State Police Detective Unit?
I was.
All right. And is part of your job or general job responsibilities to assist local agencies, law enforcement agencies, with fatal investigations?
It is.
All right. And were you assigned a specific role in this investigation?
I was assigned to be the case officer as well as an evidence officer.
All right. Could you just briefly tell us what a case officer is?
Certainly. A case officer participates in managing the case, is in contact with the flow of information into a case, and helps with facilitating the direction of a case and preparing a case file for future litigation.
Okay. And what's the general role of an evidence officer?
Yep. So the role of
make sure they understand. At this point, word is no longer on scene, correct?
Correct.
And is the processing of a crime scene somewhat time-consuming?
It is.
All right. And so you were present throughout that process?
I was.
All right. And as part of that process, are what they're called crime scene photographs taken?
Correct, they were.
All right. And were you present at the time these crime scene photographs were taken?
I was.
All right. And what's the purpose of the crime scene photographs, just in general?
Certainly. To document the scene as it presents. So crime scene photographers will do what's known as overall photographs of the scene, and then later when items of apparent evidentiary value are identified, they're placarded, and then a more specific photograph is then captured.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm just going to do these in groups. There's 6 images. Just look through them briefly and tell me if you recognize what they are. If you do.
Yes, Counselor, I do recognize them.
And just in general, what are these depict?
Those were photographs depicting the scene in Westfield 92 White Street.
And are these photographs from the exterior vantage point or interior vantage point?
That would be the exterior vantage point.
Matt?
Yeah, I need to see him too, so why don't you show him to Attorney Elkins first? Just 1 through 6, Mr. Green, is that what you're doing?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
All right, so these would be the following next 6 exhibits.
It'll be exhibits 3 through 8.
3 through 8.
Just what does this generally depict?
Yep, that's the cross street of East Bartlett and White Street.
Now I am displaying exhibit number 6, and again, just a general description of this area.
Sure, that is the street view front entrance of the address known as 92 White Street.
Trooper, this is exhibit 7. Can you just tell me what we're looking at here?
Certainly, that's the same image as previously depicted. However, it's a little bit closer, depicting the number 92 to the right doorway of 92 White Street.
Trooper, I'm showing you exhibit number 3. Can you tell me what's captioned in that particular photograph?
Yes, sir. So that is an exterior view taken from the rear of 92 White Street. In the foreground are 2 vehicles, and then a little bit further in the background is the rear exterior of 92 White Street.
Displaying exhibit number 8. Can you tell me what's depicted in that photograph, please, Trooper?
I can. So this is the parking area, driveway of 92 White Street, and 2 vehicles here are depicted.
All right. In the course of your investigation, identify those 2 vehicles?
I was.
And start with the one on the left, the silver car.
Sure. The one on the left is a BMW. It's a silver car that was identified as belonging to Mr. Scanlon. And right is a Chevy Cobalt that was identified as belonging to Miss Alexis Avery.
Thank you. As part of these. And I'll just ask you a few brief questions about some of these, Trooper. This is Exhibit 9. Can you just tell me what's depicted there?
Yes. So the vantage point is a hallway that ascends to this door here. This door is the entry door to the second floor apartment.
Probably should have showed you 10 first. What is that a picture of?
Yep. That is a picture of the entryway into the apartment.
So that would lead up to?
Correct. Correct.
9, which is the door.
Very good. Yes, sir.
And then when you make entry into the apartment, I'm showing you Exhibit 11. Sorry.
Not a problem.
That way. Can you tell me just generally what this image depicts?
Certainly, as you just entered into the apartment, this is sort of the common area that combines with the kitchen and a small table for, an eatery type table.
This is Exhibit 12, Trooper. Can you tell me what that depicts?
Certainly. So again, this is a continuance of that kitchen living space. To the right is that small table just previously mentioned. And the primary focus here is the back end of the stove with some paneling that is protruding and removed from the back end of the stove.
Now I'm showing you 13. Again, can you just tell me what's significant about this particular picture?
Sure. So what's most significant is at the bottom of the backside of the stove here. The paneling that was just mentioned was removed for further analysis here. And our attention was drawn to the base of this stove, the pilot area, the gas intake line area of the stove.
And number 14, Trooper. What is that depict?
Right, so that's a small hallway behind where those previous images were depicting. And most notable here is the briefcase.
Briefcase, suitcase?
Suitcase, yeah, thank you. My apologies.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yep. Can I get the bill? I need the...
Those general images.
With any emotion.
Those general images.
So they're general images moving towards the very specific area of the kitchen where the scene was highly relevant.
Are these fair and accurate copies of the crime scene that you observed that day?
They are.
I'd offer these next door, please.
I just want to make sure that I understand.
Exactly what we're doing. Yeah, hand them to Attorney Elkins, please, first.
Thank you.
All right, subject to those objections, they'll be marked.
Okay, 15, 16, 17, and 18.
I need to have a discussion with the jury now about something. We're about to enter into an area where there are going to be photographs that are going to be marked into evidence. So when the photographs are introduced and when you view them in court and when you evaluate them during the course of your deliberations, you are to do so calmly, coolly, and without emotion, even though some may be considered unpleasant or graphic. You must not at any point allow sympathy or pity which might be occasioned by an exhibit to interfere with your sworn task of rationally considering all of the evidence. Consider these exhibits only as they may draw attention to a clinical medical status, to the nature of the injuries, the position of the body, the positioning of any entry or of any projectile, or the color of any clothing. All right, but they are not to be considered by you now or at any point with any emotion. Okay?
Trooper, I'm showing you now Exhibit 15. Can you just take a quick look at that and tell me what's depicted there?
Certainly. So the vantage point is standing in that common area. As we discussed, to the left is the kitchenette area, and then moving farther into the background is the entryway into like the television room.
Now displaying Exhibit 16. Can you tell me what's depicted in this image, Trooper?
I can. So predominantly our eye is drawn to the floor area. We see some red-brown staining. We see some other items, clothing, and belongings that are on the floor.
Showing you Exhibit 17. What's depicted in this picture?
So this would be known as the kitchen sink, and most notable with respect to this, in terms of evidentiary-wise, is our attention is drawn to a pink knife on the sink area, on the wooden sink area.
And now depicting Exhibit 18.
This is
what's depicted in that image.
I can. This is the deceased body of Miss Alexis Avery. We also see red-brown staining, and we see soiled linens as well.
Want to be seen? You want to be seen?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
One image. Please tell me if you recognize what that is.
I do. I recognize that.
What is that?
That is a pink Cuisinart knife that was found on the counter area of the kitchen sink.
May I offer this as an exhibit?
Yes. 19? 19.
Objection as previously noted.
All right, overruled.
Trooper, I'm displaying Exhibit 19. Can you tell me what's depicted in this image?
I can, sir. That would be the pink Cuisinart knife that I just previously mentioned. Again, it's on the counter area of that sink that was in the kitchen.
And were you also the evidence officer in this case?
I was.
Did you collect certain items of evidence?
I collected two items personally, but I cataloged and logged the items that were collected in its totality.
Can we take Exhibit 19 down, Mr. Green, please?
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Reapproach.
Can you just please tell me, open that and just look inside yourself. Let me know if you recognize what that item is.
I do.
And what do you recognize that item is?
That is the same item that I just previously spoke about that was on the screen. It's the pink Cuisinart knife.
All right. And this was collected as evidence at the scene?
Correct.
Cataloged by you as the evidence officer?
Also correct, sir.
And so this is the item that we were just discussing?
Correct.
I will offer this as counsel necessary.
20 without objection.
I'm going to show you 2 images. Just tell me if you recognize them, if you do it.
I do.
One of those images is there.
Those are 2 images of the deceased body of Miss Alexis Avery.
And are they a fair and accurate representation of the way she was found on the original floor that way?
They are.
I'll offer these as the next 2.
Over objection.
As previously noted, Your Honor.
Yes, as previously noted, the objections overruled. They'll be admitted in the next 2 exhibits.
21 and 22.
Trooper, I'm going to display number 20. Actually, I'll start with 20.
22, you said?
Yes, please.
22.
Trooper, what's depicted in image or exhibit number 22?
Certainly, this is a closer image. Miss Avery's presenting in the kitchen. She is supine on the floor. Next to her would be some bed linens, a pillow, also what appears to be some trash. She's observed wearing dark-colored pants and a pink-colored outer garment.
And Trooper 21, just tell me what's depicted in that image.
This is a close-up image of the abdominal area of Miss Avery.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we're going to take a brief 5-minute timeout, okay? We're going to suspend for 5 minutes. We'll be on a break. Keep my instructions pretty firmly in mind that I've given you at the end of the day. And we'll see you in about 5 minutes to resume, and we'll break at 1 or maybe shortly before 1 o'clock. All right? Leave your notebooks in the chairs. See you in a few minutes.
Your notebooks on the chairs.
Noted. Looks like
Do you recognize those images?
I do.
Those are very accurate representations of other areas in the apartment that morning.
They are.
Thank you.
Well,
That also reaches the next 7.
with the objection as noted, looks like it's
23 through 29.
Looks like it's 26 through 30 on ID.
Okay.
B for ID. I'm sorry, B.
B.
Trooper, I'm now going to display for you what's been marked as exhibit number 23. Can you just tell me what's generally depicted in that image?
sure. So this is the floor area of where the table had been. And what's most notable here are the belongings that we're looking at here, the U-Haul box. And of course we see some...
Overruled. Ask another question, Mr. Green.
That's fine. Trooper, you don't have to describe everything in the photograph, but what if you know, where does this area lead into?
Yes, I do know. So we also see the carpeted area. There's red-brown stains leading into the footstep there, a wooden footstep also presenting with red-brown stains, and then beyond that would be the television room. Yep.
Now showing you exhibit 24. Can you tell me what we're looking at in that image, Trooper?
I can. This is the television room. We have a sofa, a small table. That's what's depicted there.
Showing you exhibit 25. Can you tell me what's depicted generally again in this image?
I can. So again, we're seeing here the sofa area, and we see a pillow. Next to the pillow, we see a cord and a cell phone.
Exhibit number 26. Can you tell me what's depicted there? Up close more.
Certainly, this is a closer examination of the pillow region. We see a part of the sofa here that has red-brown staining. We see that same pillow. We see a cord and a cell phone.
All right, Trooper. This is Exhibit 27. Can you tell me what we're looking at there?
Sure. So we're back in the kitchen common area again, and we're looking at the backside of the stove.
Showing you 28. Can you tell me what we're looking at there?
Sure. So that's a closer image of the base of the stove, and that's the gas intake area of the stove.
And Exhibit 29. Can you tell me what we're looking at there?
It's a closer up image. What we do see here is what appears to be a rolled.
And Your Honor?
It's a closer up image, sustained.
A closer up image
Of what we just spoke about moments ago, the gas intake area, correct?
And again, I'm not going to
Sure.
ask you questions about that, but I will ask you this one question. When you were present on scene, did you make any initial observations of any odd smells or odors when you came?
We did. So upon executing the search warrant, making entry to do our analysis, collectively the investigators were drawn to a noxious odor consistent with the smell of gas. We determined the scene was needed to be safe, so we exited and called in additional resources to make the scene safe.
And additional resources, who do you mean by that?
Fire department, and it was a member of the gas company as well.
Okay.
You're welcome.
May we approach you?
Yep. Okay.
And could you just tell me what's generally depicted in those images?
Certainly. So generally depicted here is a close-up, a series of close-up photographs of items of apparent evidentiary value.
And are they signified with any sort of markers?
They are. They're signified with a placard, evidence marker, and it's a numeric placard.
Is that fairly common?
It is.
Yeah, all right. The off the basis, the next slide is good.
I just see those to make sure, subject to those objections which are overruled. Mark. The next 5, yes.
30 to 34.
Where's H? Said 1. Why marked H?
Sure. Of identifying items of apparent evidentiary value.
Just for the record, H for ID is excluded. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
What are the numbers on the placards, if you can tell?
Yep, so those are item numbers that are used to catalog and organize the items that are collected. So we see numbers 7, 8, and 9 respectively.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Exhibit 31, displaying that now. What is the significance of this particular image?
Sure, so placard number 8 is depicting the area of linen here, but most notably the item that is in green.
And now showing you 34. Can you tell me what that depicts?
Yes, and so that, again, is item number 8 from a different angle here, and that is a large green Cuisinart knife.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 33. You tell me what's depicted in that image.
Yep, so this is a green Cuisinart sheath, and it has a number 14 placard next to it.
And Exhibit 32, what's the significance of that 9 placard?
Yep, number 9 placard is depicting the pink previously mentioned Cuisinart knife.
Maybe put just briefly, please.
Yep. I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
A set of keys.
And just so we're clear, where generally was that located?
Sure, so that's on the floor area just above Miss Avery's head. You're welcome.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the keys?
It is.
That,
Over objection, and maybe mark the next exhibit.
35.
as the evidence officer, did you also collect some items?
I did. Yes.
Here, I'm showing you key for items. Just take a look at that item.
Okay.
Inside of the item.
Absolutely.
Part of it.
Yes.
You recognize that item?
I do.
What is that?
That is a cell phone. It's an iPhone with a slightly pink-colored sparkly case. That was identified throughout the course of the investigation as belonging to Miss Avery.
And did you seize that item?
I did.
And where did you seize it from?
That was from the sofa region of the couch that was depicted in the television room. You're welcome.
Then I moved off of this as an exhibit at this time.
All right.
No objection.
All right, maybe mark without objection as 36, right? Mr. Walsh, 36?
36.
Trooper, I'm showing you what previously marked F for identification.
Got it. Small. Yes. Okay. Forgive me. These are keys and a key fob, more specifically. These are the ones that we just spoke about a moment ago that are depicted in the photograph that were found near the head region of Miss Avery.
Thank you. I moved to offer these as the next exhibit, Your Honor, from my identification.
No objection.
F for ID, it'll be 37.
Trooper, I'm going to hand you this evidence box. Can you just look inside of it, please? Let me know if you recognize that item.
I do.
What do you recognize that item to be?
That is a green Cuisinart knife.
Is it the same knife that we were just discussing in the photographs?
It is. Yep.
And that was collected, tagged as evidence by you, as the evidence officer?
Correct. Yep.
Identification mark, please, Your Honor, as the next exhibit.
No objection.
All right, without objection, 38.
38.
Counselor, just a point of clarification, I apologize. That was documented on my ledger, but the item specifically in terms of collection, I believe, was the State Police Crime Lab member technician.
You were there when it was collected?
Correct.
With the court's permission, I ask that these two items be published briefly to the jurors.
Not right now. All right. Go ahead. Publishing means hand them around, the jury box?
I guess what the trooper.
Oh, you want to hold them up? Oh, all right. We can hold them up. Thank you.
The wrong word.
Go ahead.
I'm showing you exhibit 20. If you can take out what is contained in Exhibit 20 and just hold it up for the jurors to be able to see. And similarly, this is Exhibit 28. Could you just take that out?
Sure.
Yeah, more.
Of course.
Just a couple of more general questions. Are you familiar with the term canvas?
I am.
What is that? Just is that fancy cop talk for something?
Certainly. So, canvas is a term we use for a video and/or witness canvas, an attempt to identify additional evidence, and also an attempt to identify individuals in and around a scene to question them as to whether or not they heard something or saw something.
Do you know if a canvas was attempted in this particular situation?
It was.
Was there anything of significance developed during the canvas?
Rephrase that question. Sustained.
Are you familiar if a canvas was done?
I am familiar.
All right. As a result of that canvas, did you need to follow up with any other aspects of the investigation?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, that's overruled. Yes or no?
Yes, we conducted a canvas, and by we, the collective police investigators. Nothing was gleaned other than...
Your Honor.
Sustained. Next question.
That's fine.
Go ahead, Mr. Green.
I believe that is all the questions I have. Thank you very much, Trooper.
You're welcome. Cross.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Sure. And I want to talk them over with you now. So there's instructions that I gave you Wednesday at, so we're going to break early for our lunch hour and resume at 2 o'clock. So there's instructions that I gave you Wednesday, and I want to talk them over with you now. They are, first, keep an open mind. We've only heard some of the evidence in this case, and you're not to form any judgment as to any aspect of this case. Keep your open mind throughout the entirety of this particular case. The last witness, the last piece of evidence is just as important as any other piece of evidence in this case. As you all know, you're to decide this case based upon only the evidence here in the courtroom. That means that during the course of the trial, don't do any searches of any kind on the internet, websites, blogs, or use any other electronic tools to obtain any information about this case, conduct any legal research, or do anything else to help you decide the case. Don't try to find information from any source outside of this particular courtroom or have anybody do that for you. Remember, as judges, you're not investigators of this case. You're fact finders and fact judges in this particular case. Don't post or discuss this case in any social media forum or website. Don't discuss the case with anybody, including among yourselves. Sometimes jurors pair off in certain groups and go off to lunch. And the only thing you have in common is this case, but don't discuss it. You're free to talk about anything you'd like other than this particular case. Avoid people that you see involved in the trial in the hallways. I'm sure the court officers will show you the stairwell to get out, but unfortunately there's only one way into the building and everybody uses this. And just avoid those particular folks. I'd also remind you, as you've probably seen, there's been some media coverage of this particular case and photographers that come in during the course of the case. Just because a photographer here or the media is covering this particular case, don't give it any greater or lesser emphasis than you otherwise might, or that particular witness any greater or lesser emphasis if they happen to be here and photographed. And again, I remind you that your prohibition, the court order prohibiting you from seeking any information about about this case specifically includes trying to seek any aspect of any media coverage about this case, finding out or looking at that or having somebody else look at I know and trust. So we'll finish up with Trooper Christofori. We will get the last witness of the day completed before we leave for the day, and if we break early, we break early. If we have to go a little after 4, that's what we'll do. All right?
Thank you.
All right, so we'll see you at 2 o'clock. Take care.
All rise.
All right, so morning session is done. Again, we're getting in more of the foundational witnesses right now, or at least the first few witnesses that came in. But I think, it'll be interesting to see what the defense's theory is going to be on this case in terms of what they're going to try to argue here. Because the issue I have right now watching this case is he walks up to the car. Had he killed her in the parking lot, that's all part of one mindset. That's all part of the heat of passion. You go home, you calmly tell her to get out of the car, go home, you go into the kitchen. You've left the scene of the incident that you're claiming is going to cause the intent to be negated. In other words, you're so overwhelmed by what you've seen in that car, which is what the defense is going to allege, that the intent to formulate the murderous intent is no longer present. It's incapable of happening because you're overwhelmed by emotion and you just do this act. So I'm curious to see how the defense or what their theory is. I assume we're going to hear from Mr. Scanlon because I don't see how they can put that on through witnesses or through cross-examination. Otherwise, you're just left with this idea here that they come home, he's threatening this guy. He, I guess, decides I'm going to take her home and kills her, leaves her there for a couple of days. And then only after the mom says, I'm coming to your house, I've seen Dateline, if I don't hear from you, daughter, he decides, let me call 911, slice my wrists, and, put on the show that he put on for the police. Now, there are other aspects of this case that you may not be aware of. So I'm going to show you a little bit about that. So let's very quickly jump into the Justice computer here. And I'm going to show you some other information you might not be aware of here. All right, so what we're looking at here, make sure my audio is on. Yes, okay, is a slip opinion. Now, the slip opinion deals with another case, okay, that's going on for Blake Scanlon or Scanlon. So this deals with the prosecutor that's in this case, the one that you've seen, Prosecutor Green, and trying to disqualify him from the case, or at least from this other case that was involved, because Blake Scanlon, when he was in jail, or when he was sitting in jail waiting for this case to go forward, attempted to hire someone to unalive the prosecutor and witnesses in this case. So that prosecutor that you see in the case, now they were saying they wanted to have the prosecutor, the Commonwealth wanted that prosecutor to stay in that case and prosecute that case. Now, Scanlon's attorney said, no, that can't happen. He's a witness. And there's a jailhouse informant that they're going to be relying on in that case. But this case is, like I said, it's very, it's a little bit more involved than what meets the eye. So we'll read the background here to kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. Now, obviously, I don't want this to skirt your mind. This jury's not going to be aware of this information when they're determining this case, but this gives you the mindset of this young man and who he is. In April 2019, a Hampton County grand jury indicted the defendant, Blake Scanlon, on one count of unaliving in the first degree and 1 count of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. 2 years later, in April 2021, a Hampshire County grand jury indicted Scanlon on 1 count of solicitation to commit witness intimidation and 2 counts of solicitation to commit unaliving, all in violation of the victim of one of the counts of the solicitation to commit unaliving in the Hampshire County case is the prosecutor in the Hampton County case, Matthew Green. Okay, so that prosecutor that's prosecuting, I don't know why he's even able to prosecute this case, but I guess they don't want to have, a good prosecutor taken off of a case simply because of the bad actions. But that prosecutor you see in the courtroom right now is a victim in another case, in another indictment that will be, I guess, eventually going to trial, on the basis that through certain of his own actions, Green made himself a potential witness at trial. Scanlon filed a motion to disqualify him, as well as the whole of the district attorney's office for the Hampton district, from prosecuting the Hampton County indictment and to instead appoint a special prosecutor. After a hearing, a judge in the Superior Court allowed Scanlon's motion to the extent that it sought to disqualify Green, but she denied it to the extent that it sought to disqualify the entire office of that. Now, anyways, I'm not going to go through the entire opinion. Essentially, Mr. Green obviously was allowed to stay on this case because he's not a witness in this case. But in that other case, he was taken off. But the Commonwealth District Attorney's Office is still, or the Hampton County District Attorney's Office is staying on it. So anyways, this is a wild case. It's part of the reason why I decided to switch gears as I saw it this morning and did my normal pre-case research and said, wow, okay, there's some layers here. So we're going to see this gentleman back on Law and Crime on trial for this case. Now, he's pled not guilty, and he says this individual made this up and that this prosecutor allegedly, that's the allegations, and that's why I find it very curious that this prosecutor is involved in this case, because the allegations are that this prosecutor conspired with this informant, and from our information of what we know about prosecutors and what we know about how they acted in the Tyrone Tucker case, that we know that a certain prosecutor, Colleen Dunn, and the Monroe County District Attorney's Office had a habit of using informants. Now, I think this one is a little bit, they're not using it as evidence in this case yet. Maybe we'll see. Maybe he allegedly made statements, but they are using it, to try to prosecute him on additional charges. So it'll be very interesting to see how that trial plays out. But Mr. Scanlon is in a lot of trouble here. And if he truly did those things, that he actually attempted to put a hit out on the prosecutor and on a witness in this case, well, I think that speaks to the idea of what really happened in that apartment. Was it some heat of passion thing, or was it a situation where he's just a bad egg? Anyways, I wanted to bring that up. So plan here is court will resume at 2, and it will go on for 2 more hours, 2 to 4. So we're going to go on break here. We're going to end the AM session. Hopefully we'll be back up around 2 o'clock. I like to give it a 15-minute head start just to be able to move through sidebars and stuff like that more quickly. But we'll be back around 2 to start covering the back end of this case and back end of this trial session. So I appreciate everybody in there, all 21 of you right now that are in there watching. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for coming in. Hopefully you'll come back. I will be putting up a link to that broadcast here momentarily once we go down. In the meantime, guys, thanks for watching. Check out tonight. We are premiering first of what will be a Monday series for the next few weeks on the Tyrone Tucker case called Gagged, Why They Silenced Franklin Tucker. Check it out tonight at 7 o'clock. Of course, it's premiering, but the video will be up. And then we will be trying to do episode 9 of Justice Watch Live, where we'll talk about this case, the Tyrone Tucker broadcast, and other things going on in the justice system. So be on the lookout for between 9 and 11, a link going up for that show as well. Anyways, guys, I will see you soon at 2 o'clock. Thank you for watching, and let justice prevail in the meantime.
Took a swing at a wrecking ball and I prayed for my downfall, and I found a way to reconcile, 'cause in my heart it's not worthwhile. It's a bloody battlefield where some go down, others heal. In the end it's all the same. All you can do is play the game. Oh, do we say goodbye? Refuse to question why. I'm sad to say I'm sorry, so lie. Pretend that you're okay. Swear that you will stay. Keep trying for one day. I'm sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. There's nothing left for me to hide. Don't wanna live a lie. Too many lows, too many highs. Too many things to criticize. And so I leave it all behind. Don't wanna live a lie. Life kept spitting at my feet and forced me down a dead-end street, when all I had went up in flames, burning only dark remains. I cover up every part of my skin, oh, 'cause I don't like the person within. Oh, I know I'm the one to blame. All I can do is take the shame. Oh, do we say goodbye? Refuse to question why. I'm too sad to say I'm sorry, so lie and pretend that you're okay. Swear that you will stay. Keep trying for one day. Whoa, I'm sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. There's nothing left for me to hide. Don't wanna live a lie. Too many lows, too many highs. Too many things to criticize. So I leave it all behind. Don't wanna live a lie. Sick of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. Oh no. Took a swing at a wrecking ball and I prayed for my downfall, and I found a way to reconcile, 'cause in my heart it's not worthwhile. It's a bloody battlefield.